the African Union, and other international fora. The point I am making is that it's not too late, that the Libyan matter is not over, and that we should still continue to engage this question. The media in Africa has always been controlled by Western forces. But we have our own media. We have our own networks. We have our own ways of communications. We have our own resources. Why is it we do not engage those areas so that if something is happening today in Lesotho and there's a call by African states to intervene, why is it there's not the African point of view there? That's what I am calling for CODESRIA to be leading on this question. Similarly, with Boko Haram, why do we not have more engagement from African men or women? On the question of our ambassador from Zimbabwe, and I'm glad to see my colleague who has been in the struggle for democracy in Zimbabwe for a very long time, that I've known her since she was there in the trenches long ago, that part of my call for this forum is because I am of the view that institutions such as CODESRIA, the Nyerere Foundation, the Mbeki Foundation, and other such institutions have a role to play in closing that gap. That we should not just be looking to the African leaders, that I have not seen a CODESRIA bulletin on Libya. And when this is one of the most important things that has happened in Africa. And we should not always wait for foreign funding to have a discussion. Why is the Namibian government, for example, not hosting a major conference on peace in Libya? Because the solidarity that took place at the time of Namibian independence meant that we did not wait for Western sources of funds for Tanzania to always have meetings about what was going on in Namibia. So that I believe that same responsibilities should be devolved today in relationship to what's going on. On the question of whether moderate leaders do not fall and radical leaders fall, I think that's a misconception. If you're a moderate leader and you do not support the West, you will fall. The point is, they just do not want any African leader who's thinking in the interest of Africa. But part of the responsibility that we must have is that our students, our youth, in our mosques, in our churches, in our schools, and our communities must know who Patrice Lumumba was. Why did Patrice Lumumba stand for the independence of the Congo? I was amazed 20 years ago. I was walking on the campus of the University of Dar es Salaam, and I saw some primary school children, and I called them over and said, "Do you know who Samora Machel is?" And they said, "Samora who?" This was 5 years after Samora Machel died. So we ourselves are continuing to the disinformation because many of the young people do not know Samora Machel, do not know Frantz Fanon, do not, and we educate them. I was coming here and I was driving behind a bus. And in driving behind the bus, I said, look at this cultural image. This is a Tata bus, and behind the bus you have Manchester United. So everywhere there are these cultural reference points. So no wonder our youths do not understand, because we spend more time talking about Western reference points. I do not discount what our African brothers and sisters do in the engagement with Africa. In fact, I'm very engaged with the radical African feminists who are raising the question of how to create a Pan-African women's liberation organization, because the Pan-African radical feminists are at one with our brothers and sisters in North America who are saying Black Lives Matter. Because in Africa, when some people die in France from a bombing, African leaders fly to France and march on the streets with Hollande about people dying in France. And when people die in the United States, not one African leader say anything about Africans who die. So we need to have that sensibility that anything that happens to an African in Haiti, in Cuba, in Brazil, in the United States, in Libya, or in Somalia is an injury to all Africa. Now, for my brother here, I hope you were not methodically trying to abolish our seminar. Because this intervention you had there with the press conference was a methodic diversion. The point is, we cannot have a methodic abolition of Western European currency. It has to be sharp, it has to be sudden, and we have to take them by surprise. Anything methodic is warning them and giving them notice. What we must call for is not methodic abolition, is constant information and education. So when the moment comes, which it must come because it's coming out of the financial crisis, we'll be ready. I just want to take an example from what happened in Germany. The Germans were always very clear that they were going to unite the currencies of West and East Germany. So in the universities in Germany, they always taught German students about what it means to unite the currency. So at the time of the fall of the Berlin Wall, Chancellor Helmut Kohl did not do a methodic abolition of the two currencies. He did it overnight, and they informed the French, the British, the Russians, and the Americans, because he knew if he went about it methodically, they would oppose it. So we don't want to do a methodic getting the African currency. I think France wants a methodic because they want to know what tactics. The most important thing is we want France to get out of Africa. We need to educate Africans on what the role of the CFA. The CFA is not a stabilizing force in Africa. It is a basis for draining currencies out of Africa. Moreover, if they can do what they call quantitative easing, that is, they print their currency in currency wars, what kind of stability are they bringing to Africa with this kind of currency war? So we are very, very clear that the process of the unification of Africa is already advanced. The people of Africa do not need to be told about unity. It is the governments of Africa that's against unity. You cannot tell a trader from Senegal who goes to Angola, who goes to South Africa. The Senegalese traders know about African unity more than anyone else. And that Senegalese trader know about how to change currency in every currency in Africa. So it is our universities who are behind the people. I would want to thank all of you for joining us in this discussion of African integration. African integration is strong. The point that was being made about Africa in 2033 is how do we harmonize our technical resources in preparation for that time? Because there is a global capitalist crisis. We would be talking about step-by-step process for integration and regional integration if there was not a capitalist crisis. But the capitalist crisis means that there are different currency blocks. There is the US dollar, the euro, the Japanese yen, the Chinese RMB, and the Latin Americans want their own currency. Why do we have to wait to have our own integration and currency? Can I stop there? Can I thank you all very much? I thank you for your attendance.
Well, I think all of you would agree with me that we had one of the most wonderful afternoons any one of us would have hoped for. Another round of applause. And finally, thank you, all of you for coming to be with us here, including the diplomats who came in big numbers. This book here is very important. I'm not receiving any commission, but it's really a must to read. It's available there at a very promotional price. Thank you. So we have some refreshments here to try to challenge the heat. So please join